Hello my friends, thank you for taking my cookie class. I am going to be doing some Nightmare Before Christmas cookies for you here. So whether you are at home following along or in class following along at your own pace, welcome. We are going to be hopping back and forth between a few different cookies. The reason for that is that royal icing sets up, and when it sets up it hardens over, and that kind of helps us play around with different effects with the icing and add details to your fun cookies. I do highly suggest practicing a little bit on a plate or a piece of paper. Get the feel of royal icing before you start on a cookie so you don't needlessly mess up. Though if you do mess up, just let it set up, scrape it off, and try again. I also have sped up this video quite a bit. That will make it a little easier to go from cookie to cookie, so be prepared to pause when needed. I wanted to show you that there are actually a few different types of Jack skeleton faces that you can do. The one that I demonstrate is the easiest one that I could find, and it will be a little easier for beginners, but feel free to play around and try a different face if you want to do that. So the first cookies that we are going to do are Jack and Sally. For Sally, we're just going to do the patchwork on her dress. Make sure to leave a border, so we're going to add some stitches on that later, and create some little sections for her patches. For Jack, we're going to draw some eye sockets and paint that flat so it can dry, and that will create more of a deep socket look. I'm going to set these aside and let them dry for a second. On our piece of candy, we're going to do our outer edge first. I find this the best way is just to kind of go back and forth on those edges. And then I'm going to trace the border here. And then we can use a little bit of that. Well, first I'm going to straighten it out, but then we can use a little bit of it to kind of streak some color into the orange, just for fun. Feel free to have fun with this. You can add a little bit of purple on the outer edge. Now we're just creating some stripes. We're going to fill those in. Keep in mind that when you're filling, you want to do that a little bit quicker so you have time to stir it before it settles. Otherwise it gets a little lumpy. Now we're going to let that dry. Now we're going to do our bottle. You can do wormswort, nightshade, or a frog's breath. I think these are all fun. You can do the lid the same color. You can do the lid a different color. It's really up to you. And this one I decided to do the lid and the bottle a different color. Right there I'm mixing my icing a little bit because sometimes the water separates. Trace out your outer edge and then fill the bottle in all of the way and move it around to where it will all settle. Now I can set this aside. Let's go back to Jack. We're going to be tracing the eyes. Make sure to make the eyes nice and big. It's easier to fill it in more than it is to go back and try to make them bigger. Trace the eyes, then I go around the outer edge and fill all of that in, and then take your scribe and stir it around to help it settle nicely. Remember that royal icing is really forgiving. If your edges aren't perfect, you can kind of move it around while it's still soft. Just don't wait too long. Set that aside. Back to Sally. We're going to fill in our purple section. I like to allow that black to show just a little bit underneath, but you can cover it up as much as you want to. Use your scribe to stir it a little. And we're going to add a little bit of black to the side so we can dip our stir stick. This will make thinner lines than if you just piped them right onto the cookie. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the next section. I'm going to fill in my orange. Now I've done it both ways where I've left this just plain, which looks good, and this time I decided to do a crisscross look with the same technique we used on the purple. I do pour new black just so we don't cross-contaminate the colors. Now moving on to our green. Again, we just do the edge. You can really use the tip of the icing to work it in where you want it. I am realizing on this video that I did the stripes, but I forgot to do the spots. So keep in mind that after you do the stripes, you can let it set up a little bit longer and come back and put the spots on there if you want them to look raised, or you can do them right after you do the stripes if you want them to set into the icing a little bit. Moving on to our black. I keep this section small because I don't personally like to eat a lot of black frosting. Now we just need to let this set up. Let's go back to Jack. We need to add his nose and his mouth. In this case, I decided to pipe them on top of the white instead of painting them in the background and leaving them open. This is an easier method, but you can do that if you want it to look like his mouth is more open. It's more detailed. And right here you'll see that I hit a liquidy spot. I am not beyond making mistakes. So what I did here was just cover it up with a little bit of white. Got a little bit of that off and put a little bit of white over it and settled it a little bit. And it's not perfect, but it still turned out pretty good. Back to our frog's breath. We're going to add the label. You can do this with a black edge or with just white. Both look good. You're going to fill it in, let it settle, and then we'll come back to add the words. Back to our candy, fill in your next color. If you want them to kind of swirl together more, do both your colors at the same time and use your scribe to move them around. But this method will keep the colors separate and create that striped look for you. Going to settle that into the crevices. And now we're going to add some cute polka dots. You can also do this when it's wet with some sprinkles. Back to frog's breath. You can also do worm's wort or nightshade. I'm adding a little bit of brown food coloring onto the label portion. Make sure that is fully set up before you start doing this or it will start to dent your label. You can also outline this with black or leave it the way it is. It's really up to you. When doing your writing, make sure to start at the far left. Keep your writing somewhat small so you leave yourself enough room. And the great part about this label is it is okay to have sloppy writing. Add a little decoration if you want, and if you want to, outline your label. I did decide to add a little more detail to my lid, but my frosting didn't work very good. I added a little more orange later for detail. Now we're going to give Sally some stitches. This is also where you can do some polka dots on that green area because that is what her fabric looks like. I just forgot. Okay, and we're all done. Thank you so much for taking my cookie class. Please like and subscribe to my channel here. And if you haven't followed us on Women's Night Out on Facebook, please do so. If you are local to the area in Utah, we would love to have you at one of our classes.